of that carcass. You get Islam once and for all. Because what if we had the oppositions in courts? Will we be having them respond to this situation this particular way? But of course, we are still going to handle this issue holistically because it's a trending and very serious conversation in the country. But if you quite remember, early on this week, there was a really serious case in Niger State where bandits ambushed some men of the Nigerian Air Force, and some men of the force were killed, and a helicopter was brought down, which we saw bandits come out to claim that it was their work. But of course, investigations are going on. But on the heel of that, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday mourned the death of troops killed by bandits in an ambush in the Shiroro area of Niger State, as well as the crash of the Nigerian Air Force helicopter in the state on Monday. Now, the president, in a statement he personally signed on Tuesday, stated that the incident brought him immense sadness. Now, he said these officers and men were answering the call of duty while on an evacuation mission. Now, in their dedicated service to our beloved country, they paid the ultimate price. While commending the courage and devotion of the fallen soldiers, Tinubu said, "On behalf of a grateful nation, I extend my condolences to their families, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Naval Staff, and the entire armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria." Now, this was as the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, vowed that the military would rid Niger State and other states of banditry and insurgency. Now, of course, like I earlier said, this came after bandits laid an ambush for troops and killed many in the Shiroro area of Niger State. The Air Force also lost its aircraft while on a rescue mission in the state on Monday. However, Abubakar has noted that his service in collaboration with the land force would strengthen their operation. Now, this is, a really serious case. I remember having this conversation somewhere and people were more like, alarmed. How are we having men of the armed forces easily ambushed by bandits? When you say they picked up on detail or, on an intel rather, going for a rescue mission, how then did they play into the net of bandits to be killed, even overpowered, so to speak, at this point? I know that I read an article somewhere, I think in Ogun State or Ondo State, where the Nigeria police force in the state arraigned a particular woman for always bringing forward misinforming the Nigeria police force. So where exactly did this go wrong? Did the Nigerian Air Force or the Nigerian military pick up an intel that was not verified before they sent out the men? And how is it even possible that these bandits will overpower, these military men? Of course, it's not even like they were heading towards bandits, they were heading towards evacuation. So where is the mix? Like they said, an investigation has to be done. The states have to be rid of, these bandits. But this is a rather serious case. And like we always used to say in the time of former President Muhammadu Buhari, we do hope that we are not, inching closer to a day of getting press statements and, condolences messages from the president only.
Well, each time we talk about security issues, my standpoint has always been the same, and the standpoint of Nigerians reflects that standpoint. We've had different administration from the president of the former president Muhammadu Buhari issuing different press statements, vying to eradicate, Boko Haram, insurgents, bandits, and all of those. And then 4 years gone, 8 years gone, we're still here vowing to eradicate, bandits, vowing to eradicate Boko Haram terrorists, ISWAP, and other terrorist organizations. But have we seen anything really happening beyond this vying? Yes, we can give it to the Nigerian military and armed forces that they have done significantly great. But if you filter the minds of what some security experts in the country have said over time, that as long as there are people who are gaining from the war against insecurity, as long as there are people who are making money out of, the crisis situation Nigeria is in, as long as there are persons within the ranks and files of the armed forces who are compromised, we will never get to the point of being able to eradicate these insurgents in their pockets, regardless of how much work is done. And don't forget that we've also have footages of military personnel, coming out to say why they feel, disorganized, or why they feel let down when they are in the battlefield. You ask a very, very pertinent question. How is it that an intelligent operation that requires high level of, codified languages, codified signals, gets to the hands of terrorists to know the movement, the route, the plan of the Nigerian military and the Air Force, to the point that they can go ahead to go and position themselves and of attack when these ones are not even prepared for it? Because remember, it is not about how much of a military might you have. It's about having the information. So you can go with an AK-47 and somebody is standing somewhere with a pistol, and then you're gone down because you didn't have the information that there is a likelihood of this waiting there for you.
Yeah.
But if you had had that information, you would have approached that tone point with the mindset that there is a likely, enemy
So
hanging around.
alert.
And so you'll be more alert of what might happen and be proactive enough to have your counter-attack measures in place. And that is exactly what is lacking. So we need to, at this point, beyond the condolence message from the presidency, which is commendable, which is doing as a father of the nation, beyond the press statement from the leadership of the Nigerian Armed Forces, the Air Force, the Army, let us get to see a commitment in weeding out criminal elements, people within the armed forces who are, for whatever reason, collaborating with members of the insurgents. For several times we've seen those things happening, but we still keep on coming with the press statement. Weeding out, if we have to go by the security expert, Dr. Orabero, who spoke yesterday and said Nigeria has what it takes to, restore democracy in Niger under 24 hours. And it's commendable if we had to go by that line. So if we can do that in Niger, outside the shores of Nigeria, why are we still having problems settling our own insecurities across borders in Nigeria? That's the big question. So if we have to get this correct, which I know, as far as the security expert is concerned, as far as conversations with people who have served in the Nigerian army is concerned, the Nigerian army is well-trained. The armed forces are well-trained. We have the capabilities. But the efforts of the good men and women of the Nigerian armed forces are being thwarted by some few criminal elements. And unless those ones are weeded out from the system, we will not get past it.
Well, we must also note the fact that, these banditry activities have recently been on the rise in some of these northern states. Niger State, for instance, Kaduna, the axis of Zaria, and some other parts of the country have, they've been a subtle re-emergence of this violence. So when we have, the authorities saying they intend, to clamp down on this banditry, I think last week there was, some celebratory notes of victory that, the Nigerian military had invaded some banditry, hideouts, killed some, evacuated some. So let's see how this becomes a reality on ground going forward. But it's quite a sorry situation, and like the president has rightly said in his condolence message, the lives of these fallen heroes will stand remembered in our fight against insecurity in the country. But of course, we move away from that particular story. This is your big story for the day. I'd like you to do the honors of taking this one.
Well, I'd definitely be glad to do that. Well, for a while now, we've seen the federal government and the embattled CBN governor going back and forth. We started off with the announcement that the CBN governor was being suspended for investigation for what happened during his leadership as a governor of the CBN. And Nigerians were excited, particularly recognizing what happened during the cash crunch. But shortly after that, it seems the federal government veered off course, and instead of, allegations bordering on things that happened during his tenure as the CBN governor, we saw illegal possession of firearms as the charge that was brought against Emefiele by the federal government. Of course, we saw the fracas that ensued after he was granted a 20 million naira bail. And of course, we had fights between the men of the correctional facilities and the DSS, a very national shame that is yet still to be forgotten on the annals of Nigerians. But now there is a different twist. We saw that the federal government will tomorrow rearrange the suspended Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Godwin Emefiele and his associates for 6.9 billion procurement fraud at the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Maitama, Abuja. The case is for arraignment and mention Emefiele will be arraigned alongside a female CBN employee, Saudu Yaro, and her company, April 1616 Investment Limited, on 20 charges of procurement fraud, conspiracy, and conferring corrupt advantages on his associates. Emefiele, who had been in detention since he was suspended from office on June 9 by President Bola Tinubu, was accused of conferring corrupt advantages on Yaro, a director in April 1616 Investment Limited. The offense is contrary to Section 19 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act 2000. Now, report says if convicted, Emefiele may be sentenced to 5 years imprisonment without an option of a fine.
Now, this is serious. First of all, because you know that the federal government last week or early on this week had moved to upturn its first allegation against him being about the rifles that were found in his custody. And Nigerians would think it was because there was an absolute uproar by Nigerians about the fact, what exactly was this man arraigned for in the first place? Why are we no longer hearing about the money related issues during his tenure? Why is it now about possession of firearms? And it looks like whisperings and advices, and sometimes you just look at people who are in charge of a case and they're like, oh, if we don't readdress what the issue on the table is, we may be losing this one against popular opinion. And we saw the move of the federal government last week to actually upturn that. And now we're seeing that tomorrow he's going to be arraigned for 6.9 billion, it said, of procurement fraud. And Saadatu Yaro has been named, as an accomplice in this particular case. Now it will look like, a turn has been given to the problem, the agitation against Godwin Emefiele. And what do you think is going to really come out of this?
Well, it's a little bit puzzle at this moment. Let's look at the indices. First, the federal government right now is acting in contempt of court as far as legal experts are concerned. Yesterday we saw the embattled CBN governor's lawyer speaking to pressmen, and he said, in the first place, there was a bail granted to the CBN governor. That bail application has not been honored by the federal government. Emefiele is still in DSS custody as we speak. So if the federal government is heading to the court when it is actually acting in contempt of court, it therefore means, first and foremost, we'll have to look at the issue of contempt of court. We also have to look at the issue of Emefiele being granted bail. And let's not forget that Emefiele also approached another court to stay or ask for restraint on the federal government to stop prosecuting him. And if we also have to look at the cases that are being brought forward, from illegal possession of firearms, and now we are talking about fraud procurement. We've not heard anything about, apart from the number of cars that, as you mentioned, that Emefiele procured about 100 vehicles.
98 exotic vehicles.
About 100 vehicles that with that amount of money. I am kind of looking at procurement of vehicles. Even Emefiele did procure vehicles for the CBN and did it through these agencies. Yes, it is worth probing. It is worth investigating. But also, why are we not having charges related to the hike in the cash crunch policy? Why are we not having charges related to the backwardness of the naira as a means of as like the way the naira is performing against the dollar? Why are we not having charges that will make the Nigerian people understand that, okay, this man is actually being tried for his inability to reposition the CBN?
But will it be possible to try just one person? Godwin Emefiele, yes, he was the head of the system. Will it be possible to even try just him, as opposed to policies, trying him for the policies of the CBN when he was not the only person who made these policies? Do not forget that Emefiele was just, the crowned head, but then there's always a board on the CBN, that sees through policies, that sees through regulations. So when you say you smoke out Joseph Mefile to question, arraign, and probably persecute him for judgment and policies that he did not quite sit on his own to make, because one thing that we must agree in our country is that there are no institutions that are absolutely independent of the interference of the presidency, or the presidents at any point in time. So when you bring out those lines of thoughts, I'm thinking, can one man answer for the failures of an institution that takes quite a number of people? But great thoughts, but it still raises a lot of questions back and forth. So we are at the point where we're asking, how related are these questions? And something else, you were talking about the exotic cars. It takes us back to, if we're investigating exotic cars, let us find out where these cars actually purchased. Where are the cars? How much did it take to procure the cars? And if there's a problem, there's a way to go about it.
Well, definitely there is a way. I still take a mind back a little bit to the electioneering period. Remember, we saw reports that Godwin Emefiele, then as the CBN governor, was also gunning for the presidency.
Exactly.
And we saw photos of branded vehicles with his image for the 2023 presidential election. So, in as much as this is something the Nigerians are happy it's currently being investigated, there are a lot more expected on the part of Nigerians. If you're picking, just like you've rightly stated, if you're picking Godwin Emefiele out as the CBN governor, for prosecution, what happens to the other members of the board? What happens to the outgone President Muhammadu Buhari, who was the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who gave the nod for whatever decisions that went ahead to become an implemented policy? Remember, Godwin Emefiele being the CBN governor, even when we saw IMF, we saw the International Monetary Fund, we saw different organizations, World Trade Organizations, warning the Nigerian government that the move to change the Naira, as at the time it was made, was a wrong move. We saw it coming from all angles. But the president, then Muhammadu Buhari, the CBN governor, didn't listen. Even in Nigeria, we saw that the Minister of Finance said she was not in agreement with the move to rebrand the Naira note. But it did happen regardless. So it's going to take a whole lot for the federal government of Ahmed Bola Tinubu to be able to finger a particular thing that they will hold Godwin Emefiele with. Unless, of course, they're ready to take the part of bringing out everybody who was part of that decision process. Unless it gets to that point, as far as legal experts are concerned, it's going to be a big puzzle.
Well, it's always funny when we see the amount of monies that being named for cars, 77 million naira, 89 million naira. We are wondering, are you driving these cars to heaven? Especially when the fact that you are taking it out of taxpayers' monies that should be set aside to do something relevant for the country. And yes, like you rightly said, it is okay if Emefiele is tried for procurement fraud. We're just saying let proper investigations be done. Because if you're saying, for instance, these cars were bought for his presidential bid, why would you take monies out of the coffers of the Central Bank of Nigeria to buy cars for personal ambition? So there's a lot of questions there that the lawyers can rummage around. But it's good to see that we can probably say the case against the case between the federal government versus Godwin Emefiele is beginning to have some kind of turn. Let's have a direction. Let's know exactly what's being handled. But that's it for it. Tomorrow, Godwin Emefiele, embattled CBN governor, is going to be arraigned by a high court in Maitama, the Federal Capital Territory, tomorrow. Of course, the federal government has brought forward new allegations of procurement fraud against Godwin Emefiele and one of his colleagues in the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sadatu Yaro. Well, we're moving from there. I think one thing I would say on a very light note is that internet money is the new oil money. And we're seeing that the federal government is about to get a 1.2 billion naira support from Google to create jobs in the country. I know if you follow the trends very well, you will know that a number of Nigerians have become billionaires because of creating content and taking advantage of the internet, at a time like this. But we see the Vice President Kashim Shettima, yesterday being Tuesday, received some executives of Google at the presidential villa Abuja. Now, Shettima also lauded the 1.2 billion naira grant provided by the technology giant for the support of the Tinubu administration's 1 million jobs initiative. Now, according to the vice president, the announcement of the grant was commendable and worthy of emulation by other companies. Let's think outside the box and create more job opportunities. We need to walk the talk. It is easy to pontificate, but very difficult to bring all the ideas to fruition. I want to assure you this administration is ready to partner with you, of course, promising Google. Now, Nigeria is ready for business. The president says they have what they want to leave a legacy that Nigerians will be proud of many years after. Okay, so seeing collaboration between Google and the federal government. Well, let's pick it on the most important things. 1.2 billion naira grants given by to be given by Google to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Vice President Kashim Shettima is also saying other companies should take the line, toe the same line with Google and bring these investments faster. The big question, first of all, is going to be when 1.2 billion naira is given to the country as a grant. Remember that grants most often or not are not paid back to the agencies that give these monies. So what would 1.2 million naira, literally free gifts given to Nigeria, be used to do? Where will this monies be channeled to? Because we have to go beyond saying we want to create jobs for Nigerians, 1 million viable job opportunities for Nigerians. What kinds of job opportunities do the federal government intend to create? What sectors of the economy would they take 1.2 billion naira and invest into? How is it going to be spread across to affect the 36 states of the federation? And what category of Nigerians will this monies be made available for? Or are we also going to end at the point where we hear that, oh yes, there was grants given by Google to the tune of 1.2 million, but nobody after 4 years would be able to account for what 1.2 billion naira was used for in the entire tenure of the Tinubu-led administration?
Well, I wouldn't want to toe that part. I like to express hope at this point, and have sincere hope, like Nigerians, on the Ahmed Bola Tinubu administration and his drive to ensure that we have job opportunities for the teeming Nigerians. I recall that the president did promise he was going to profile 1 million jobs from the tech, space within the course of his administration. Now, if Google is the one giving the grant to Nigeria, I'm expecting that the leadership of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the Vice President Kashim Shettima, and of course the relevant government agencies saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that grants like these are being effectively utilized will look into technology. Like you rightly said, right about now, people are making all over the world millions of the internet, and technology is the new oil well. That's beside agriculture, of course. And if the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration is really keen on preferring jobs, which of course technology experts have said is possible, given the fact that Nigerian youths are very creative, Nigerian youths are very versatile, they are very talented, very industrious, and there's literally a tech area, a tech space that you wouldn't find a Nigerian brain doing something amazing in it. So if we're able to get this money get to the right hands, and it's not made like one of those political settlements where we have government schemes and grants for people in businesses or for people to start up businesses, and it just literally ends up in the hands of people who have no business doing business but have no business being around government. So it's about ensuring that this is actually properly utilized, and if that is so, trust me, the hope agenda of the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration might just have been able to leave a lasting legacy that Nigerians would look back and say, yes, we got this one correct during his administration, and so we give this to him. But we do hope that, with all the probing that is currently ongoing at the National Assembly, we get to see people sit up and then move away from, pilfering from the public treasury. But, of course, As far as the student loan, one of the key policy statement of this present administration is concerned, we see that the House of Representatives ad hoc committee on students loan fund and access to higher education has proposed that 3% of the nation's annual revenue should be channeled to student loan. Chairman of the committee, Tessia Obo, disclosed the committee's proposal at a public hearing in Abuja to determine the level of progress made by the Presidential Committee constituted to remove all impediments hindering access to the loan. Obo, while addressing the Federal Ministry of Education and the Implementation Committee, pledged the readiness of lawmakers to assist in the smooth take-off of the scheme. Now, they said they hope the system that is being created will be robust enough to take account of students who are already in school, who want the loan to cover for the 1 year or 2 years of their schooling, or students who are coming through direct entry. And of course, other measures put in place to ensure that every hindrances are removed and Nigerian students are able to access the loan is a step taken in the right direction. But then also, it still goes down to the fact that the minders of the system, people saddled with the responsibility, need to do due diligence. Remember the outcry on the part of Nigerians. Some of the criteria put forward were very much high-handed, and of course, the stipulated payback period was also a problem, considering the fact that you graduate for years and you don't have a job. So all of these issues need to be looked into, and then we can say that this is going to work for Nigerians.
Well, we also saw the fact that the president Bola Ahmed Tinubu had said every hindrance or any upheaval for this particular student loan should be taken out of the way, and there should be an ease of procurement for students. So let's see how this is going to be done. When we also say set 3% of the budget aside to be able to cater for this, good way. I was just more like still tanking the whole process of giving student loan, but let's make sure that new policies are not more pipelines for extorting the country of monies. But let's see how the implementation of the student loan will be. Of course, there's still a lot of concerns whether or not this should be holistically embraced by the education sector. But Mary Joseph is on standby to bring us news brief. When we return, there's lots more conversation to be had on the platform of Rise and Shine this morning, so do stay with us.
SpectrumTv, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses taken into counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news briefing Spectrum live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin today's news brief with President Bola Tinubu, who has mourned the death of troops killed by bandits in an ambush in Shiroro area of Niger State, as well as the crash of a Nigerian Air Force helicopter in the state. The president in the statement stated that the incident brought him immense sadness. Away from that, aviation workers in the security and logistics segment of the sector have downed tools over poor remunerations, among other welfare issues. The workers under the aegis of the National Union of Air Transport Employees made the declaration in a letter addressed to the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, and other employers in this sector. Meanwhile, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the recently concluded 2023 elections, Atiku Abubakar, has criticized President Bola Tinubu over the destruction of billboards in strategic locations in the Federal Capital Territory, drawing public attention to the judiciary as Nigerians await the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Courts. Recall that the federal government has disbanded the Secretariat of the Advertising Standard Panel yesterday due to its endorsement of billboards accused of the attempting to manipulate the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal with the slogan, "All eyes on the judiciary." To the update from the Niger coup, where President Bola Tinubu has said the biting sanctions imposed by the Economic Community of West African States on the Niger junta would not be lifted despite the military leader's promise to negotiate with the regional bloc to resolve the crisis in the Francophone country. Tinubu, who stated this when he received the special envoy of President Ali Odimba and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Gabon, Hermani Imongot, at the State House in Abuja, insisted that military takeover of government was no longer acceptable in Africa. We quickly head straight to the foreign scene now, where U.S. President Joe Biden says he will travel to Hawaii as soon as he can amid criticisms of his response to the island's deadly wildfires. Speaking in Markwai on Tuesday, Biden said he wanted to ensure that the people in the state had everything they need. Meanwhile, the reported death toll from the fires is now 101, with 1,300 people missing. And finally, in sports, Nigeria's D Tigers crashed out of the pre-Olympic qualifiers, losing their second consecutive game to Mali at the Echo Convention Center, Lagos, on Tuesday. Reports say after losing their first game of the qualifiers to Senegal on Monday, Ogo Odaudu sides needed a win to get back on track, but they failed, losing 77-68 to the Malians. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for SpectrumTv to recover 40 lives in Plateau County.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord. I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Mary Joseph just brought us tidbits of global news. But just before then, some of the issues that we've talked about in Rise and Shine this morning, we saw the fact that the federal government has made a move against APCON, that's the Advertising Agency of Nigeria, because of the eyes on the judiciary advertisement that was put around in some parts of the FCT. We also see the fact that Atiku attacked President Tinubu as the agency destroyed billboards. part of our conversation this morning also sees the condolence message sent out by the president on mourning the soldiers that were killed in the ambushments by bandits. We also talked about the fact that the federal government is moving to arraign the embattled CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele tomorrow, being Thursday, on account of procurement fraud, of course, to the tune of some billions of naira, and have also been named alongside in that particular case is Saadatu Yalo. We also see the fact that the federal government is to receive 1.2 billion naira from Google as aid to create jobs in the country. We have seen that a move has been made asking the federal government to set aside 3% of revenue for student loans to be able to aid that particular initiative. These and more are some of the conversations we've had so far on Rise and Shine. One way to catch up on all that is even follow us across all social media platforms. This is available on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That should be called X. Alright, at this point, we're moving straight up to Daily Spotlight, where we bring you information from the front pages of our national dailies.
Well, on our daily spotlight this morning, we are starting with the Vanguard newspaper. And on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, the kicker there says inflation hits 24.08% as Nigerians struggle with higher food prices. We have the rider that says measures to tackle food inflation yet to be executed. Analysts, inflation surge devastating citizens' welfare, CPPE. That's on page number 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Also on the front page, you'll find federal government files fresh 20-count charge against Emefiele in Abuja. That's on page number 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. West African military chiefs to discuss Niger crisis this week. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. We find harsh economy. Buhari spent 96% of national income on debt. Oshomole. That's on page 27 of the Vanguard newspaper. Before we wrap it up, the last story we'll take on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning, we find will maintain current petrol price without subsidy removal, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. And the writer to that story, of course, we've seen the writer there says NNPC no plans for fresh petrol price hike. That story is on page number 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. And those are the major stories you find on the front page of Vanguard this morning.
Moving on to Nigerian Tribune, the big story there says, amid subsidy question, federal government says no petrol price increase. Page 4 is where you can find details. We have here as a rider to maintain current pricing without reversing deregulation policy. Presidency says labor strike threat premature. Okay, we also see here the president affirms that there will be no increase in the pump price of premium motor spirit. The president is determined to maintain competitive tension within all subsectors of the petroleum industry. The market has been deregulated, it has been liberalized, and we are moving forward in that direction without looking back, says presidency. Okay. We also see here federal government files 20 fresh charges against Emefiele, drops firearms case, court restrains DSS from arresting his brothers. Page 4 is where you can find details. You're wondering how his brothers are now correlated in the case against Emefiele, the institutions of Nigeria. We also see here inflation rate hits 24.08% as forex scarcity bites harder. CPPE wants federal government to tweak policies, give producers and citizens relief. Page 6 is where you can find details. We also have here YCE to Tinubu, hardship getting deeper. Implement pragmatic measures now. Page 20 is where you can find details of that. Federal government dissolves advertising body over approval of all eyes on the judiciary billboard. Page 7 is where you can find details. Niger, Tinubu welcomes Central African state. Okay, I beg your pardon, that is Niger. Tinubu welcomes Central African state support for ECOWAS. Last story on the Nigerian Tribune this morning on the front page says speculation over defection to APC. Wike visits Ganduje. Page 5. And that's all we have on the front page of Nigerian Tribune.
Our next stop is the Punch newspaper this morning, and on the front page of Punch, kicker there says 6.9 billion procurement fraud. Federal government arraigns Emefiele, all eyes on Thursday. And the writer there says CBN procurement director seeks orders to testify against ex-Apex Bank governor. Suspended CBN governor allegedly bought 100 vehicles through employees. That story is on page number 2 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the front page of Punch, you find Niger, ECOWAS tightens sanctions, junta demands power supply. That's on page 2. While EFCC goes after dollar speculators, CBN slashes banks' allocations. That's on page number 15 of the Punch newspaper. Federal government may sell stakes in NNPC, 19 entities. That's on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the front page of Punch this morning, you find one dies, others missing as oil rig collapses in Delta State. That's a tragedy. That's on page number 10 of the Punch newspaper. And the last but not the least, Niger State ambush. Tinubu mourns soldiers. NAF vows to pound bandits. That's on page 7. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning.
Taking a very last paper for this morning, we are going to be looking at The Nation. And the big story there, of course, still around petrol price. Tinubu petrol price won't go up. Subsidy removal stays. We will end inefficiency. President, Labour strike threat premature. We also see a survival wage soon for Nigerians. Speaker assures. Tinubu inherited terrible economic crisis, says Oshemele. Pages 5 is where you can find details. Federal government files fresh charges against Emefiele in Abuja. Page 3 is where you can find details of that particular story. High food prices, fares push inflation to 24.08%. Page 7 is where we have the details of that very sorry story. FBN Holdings shareholders okay 150 billion naira rights issue. That's it. We also have Yele Konsani Adediran is Ogun Governor Abiodun CPS. Page 6 is where you can find details. We shut down NAV Jet. Group claims responsibility. President mourns crash victims. Of course, talking about the situation in Niger State. The very last story here says Shaibu can't destabilize my government, says Obaseki. Nayeti to probe 13% derivation. Page 3. And that's all we have for you on the front page of The Nation, and everything we have for you this morning on the front pages of the national dailies. A myriad of issues that will be handled when we bring on our guest this morning. But at this point, we are being joined by one of our guests virtually this morning, Otwekon Franklin, who is CRAN director in Akwa Ibom State. We need to look into some issues that are bedeviling the country, of course. Also making it widespread on our national dailies this morning is the far cry for subsidy removal to be deregulated. Some quarters have been asking that the federal government gives the nation some respite, but they're saying they stand on the fact that subsidy has been removed, but they are going to take out inefficiency. But CRAN had moved and made a particular request and foisted some solutions to the federal government, and that's why we have the director of CRAN in Akwa Ibom State joining us this morning. Good morning, Otwekon Franklin. Good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Good morning, Francis. Good to be with you this morning.
Yes, very great. Okay, serious issues on the table. Fuel subsidy is still a major issue, and of course we had oil marketers at the beginning of this week come out to say that possibly fuel prices will be going up as high as 700 naira and 720 naira. But if you listen to us this morning on the front pages of the national dailies, the presidency has said that oil marketers making okay now that was NLC moving for an indefinite strike. Now that threat is too early. But what are your thoughts with all of this on the table?
There is no end in sight with respect to fuel increment, pump price increment in the country, in as much as the federal government has refused deliberately to fix our refineries, in as much as the federal government has also refused to support modular refineries, in as much as the federal government has refused to appoint, the president has refused to appoint a minister of petroleum and constitute his cabinet. You will continue to have a few individuals who have constituted themselves as cabals, who sit and become market forces that will be determining the fuel pump price in the country. I'm happy that the NLC leadership is proactive and has been very pragmatic in their action. I think Joe Ajero has come up with a very strong statement, which yesterday during our press conference, that is the Crown, we also supported the stand of the NLC that should there be any further pump price increase, that Nigerians should go on a mass protest. There should be a mass protest. We should go to the streets to demand for good governance. We should take to the streets to demand that the president of the country, offer us better governance and better leadership. And so the president should do very simple things. What we are facing here is the question of supply and demand. And in a simple economy, simple mathematics, simple elementary economy, when the supply is scarce and the demand is high, the cost will be very high. When the supply is sufficient and the demand is low, the price will go down. Very simple. And so, do we have the raw materials here in Nigeria? The answer is yes. Do we have the facilities that can refine these raw materials? The answer is yes. Do we have people appointed or assigned to ensure that these materials are refined in Nigeria? The answer is yes. That is where the NNPC Limited comes into play. But instead of the NNPC Limited refining petroleum products for us to use, the only activities they are indulging on is to import petroleum products. And so, Kran demanded that yesterday that the president should publish the list of all those who have been receiving subsidy, fuel subsidy, from 1999 till May 29, 2023, when it was stopped. You cannot just come and you cover up what we have called scam. In as much as Kran is concerned, fuel subsidy has been paid by NNPC to NNPC. NNPC is the sole importer of petroleum products in Nigeria, and they are the ones that are paying this subsidy. So they are simply paying it to themselves, and because they are paying it to themselves, to a few corrupt persons in NNPC, that is why they have refused to fix our refineries. Because if they fix our refineries and refine our product here, there will be no need to import. So you can see the oil politics coming to play. If you refine locally, you will not have the need to import. And if you don't import, the issue of paying or subsidy will not arise. So until the president do the needful, which we have said from the day one, that military is one of the inherited liability of the present government. The government came on board remove the chairman of ESDC, suspend the governor of Central Bank. Why do you still allow Melekere to remain? A man that has been appointed, that has been in office for 4 good years. Melekere was appointed in 2019. This is 2023. 4 years running. He has not been able to refine a liter of petrol in the 3 major refineries that we have. And yet, every quarter we talk about turnaround maintenance and billions will be sent to turnaround maintenance activities in the 3 major refineries. So you can see that people are feeding fast at the detriment of Nigerians. And one of the person that should explain to us what is actually happening is Melekere, who is the NNPC GMD. And he has become, and NNPC has become market forces. We heard that, we saw a press statement by Ipman that our price will soon increase to 720.
But the NNPC, the NNPC is saying that they do not have any plans to increase the pump price of fuel. And let's also look at the fact that, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in, he had said, there is a big deregulation going on in the upstream and downstream sector of the petroleum industry. So we are hopeful that if more hands begin to import fuel before we get to the benchmark of December, where they said that the Port Harcourt refinery is going to start working, we should be able to have a lot of fuel in the country. But and how soon they can get fuel into the country. And I know that Crown had made a move asking that the federal government should begin to buy fuel with the Naira. Can you expatiate on that?
That is what we are simply saying. NNPC at the moment is the major or sole importer of petroleum products. That is why they have become market forces. That is why they have come up to refute that they don't have any plan to increase pump price. Now, I haven't come to say you don't have any plan to increase pump price. What have you put in place? What have you put in place to be able to make availability of the product? Has the federal government come up to say, okay, let us begin to sell crude oil to modular refinery owners, with Naira? But those who own modular refineries are buying crude oil with dollar. And so when they buy it with dollar, they will also, they will not be able to, sell it cheaper. So what we are simply saying is, in as much as the federal government has continued to indulge in importation of fuel, the prices will continue to go high. And the advice that Crown is, given to Mr. President in order to forestall mass protests in this country is for the NNPC to for the federal government to fix the 3 refineries and make it begin to work. The president said he was going to, that by December, that we'll be having Port Harcourt refinery operating coming to life by December. And that takes us to the question I have asked before. The president just came on board, barely 100 days in office. He has come up to assure that by December that there will be production that will be done in Port Harcourt refinery. Why didn't Melekere do it before now and in 4 years? So we are asking Melekere to tell us how many liters of petrol he has refined in Nigeria, indulging in importation of fuel and using market forces to increase prices of pump prices and inflict hardship on Nigerians.
Okay, so Otuk, I'd like to ask just before we let you go. You've given this advice to the presidency, the constitution of the board, appointment of a minister of petroleum and all of those. And of course, also from the president's standpoint of being able to get the Port Harcourt refinery up and operational by December, which of course at this point in time is mere speculation or mere promise. In the event that this doesn't happen, as the president has said, in the event that all other refineries are not made to be operational in Nigeria, what do you foresee being the immediate challenges that Nigerians are going to keep facing, and how would you prefer the presidency go about solving it?
The president has a genuine intention for the betterment of the country. But the president started very wrong, on a very wrong footing, on a very wrong note. First off, he has not appointed minister. There's no minister of petroleum that is advising or guiding him. He has no cabinet in place. You don't just stand up and make a statement, make a policy statement, and nobody to implement. The president wouldn't have, if you ask by opinion and what kind has maintained over time, wouldn't have come up on May 29 during his inaugural speech to say that subsidy is gone. What the president would have done would have been, first off, put your cabinet in place, have people to advise you, have a committee to work out modalities, and put in place palliatives. So that when you now finally remove subsidy, you now put those, Nigerians are already enjoying the palliatives. Nigerians are already seeing the dividends of what you are doing. Then there will not be a buy-in into the subsidy removal. What you now see is, you now see a few marketers who own petrol stations just cashing in, and the moment you say Jack Robinson, they will just tell you pump price has increased. So even NNPC use that guide to exploit Nigerians. So the only way out, like you have asked me, is for the president, first off, the president has dissolved all federal boards. I do not know whether NNPC Limited board is not part of those boards dissolved. I do not know why Melekere is still in that office. I think the president should remove Melekere and appoint someone who will be able to fix our 3 refineries, and then appoint someone who will ensure that the country will refine its own petroleum products, and then be able to support modular refineries. And when this is done, when you have enough supply of petroleum products, I can tell you for free that the price of the pump price will reduce, the cost of commodity, the high cost of living will also be less. That is just what it is. But as it stands now, Nigerians are hanging on the balance that whenever the Melekere-led board of NNPC Limited comes up to the market forces, that now determines the pump price. If you are saying you want to deregulate the sector, then you don't have one particular company like NNPC Limited coming to decide what should happen to Oando, to Total, to AP and the rest. You should allow them to also compete among themselves. That is what we are saying. So as it stands now, the president should be proactive and
thank you.
Those who are liability, who is to inherit from that government, should be shown the way out of the government.
Thank you so much, Atoka. We truly appreciate you taking the time out, and we do hope the presidency gets to take this advice and utilize it for the interests of Nigerians. We truly appreciate it. Have a great morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Serious conversations. We just need to look for a way that Nigerians can balance out at this time in the country. But of course, this is the much we can take with that particular conversation. We'll take a quick break now. And when we return, there's still more on the Rise and Shine this morning, of course. We'll be joined by Citizen Matthew O'Connor to look into certain issues. That issue with regards to the dissolution of APCON and, all the related issues. Where does this put Nigerians in the expectation of a very transparent government under the Bola Ahmed Tinubu dispensation? Let's take a quick break. When we return, Rise and Shine continues. It's a full bouquet on Rise and Shine this morning. Of course, we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa State, Nigeria. What we love to do the most is talk about issues that are of national importance to our country. We like for you to make your contributions, raise your concerns, and give us feedback. You can do so by taking advantage of all our social media platforms, all of which you can find at SpectrumTv.ng. As I said earlier, we're being joined by citizen Matthew O'Connor, who is the founder and president of Open Forum, of course, a non-governmental organization that looks into, issues that concern Nigerians and citizens, offering and preferring solutions. You could call him a public affairs analyst if you will, but we are going to be looking at certain issues. I'd like to first of all piggyback on the whole conversation between the federal government and bringing down the Advertising Agency of Nigeria as a result of the advertisement that they put up, some Nigerians put up with the hashtag All Eyes on the Judiciary. We must first of all establish that it is in the natural recourse for all eyes to be on the judiciary as expected, the last hope of the common man. But it looks like this has become a problem. Why do you dissolve an entire agency that has lasted for several years, helping us to man the system of advertising, cutting across media space and all other agencies at this time, because the conversation is gone against certain Kahoot?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I want to say that Nigeria is in a situation where citizens and even those that through themselves believe should have been their expectation will have been to reset the country, make the country to be better than where we were. Remember, during the last administration, there was something called NSAS. NSAS, for some of us, was not just talking about reforms of the police force, which was the main issue that instigated NSAS. For some of us, it was to end special armed robbery. Special in the sense that governments have lost touch with reality. Those in government believe that they have license. The immunity some of them have been turned to impunity. And at the end of the day, you find that there's no accountability, no productivity, and virtually every sector had collapsed. And those that held contrary views were seen to be anti-government. The level of propaganda by those in government, even to their own shame, became so high that they even had to start probing themselves. We saw that. So 2023 election was, like some people used to say then, a do or die affair. Yes, it was a make or mar election. And by the grace of God, we had the amendments of the electoral law, which introduced some checks that will guarantee that you can't rig election like before. Fast forward, we are in courts. Okay, we call it tribunal, because those that were declared winners and those that were said not to have won, they have issues and they are in court. And this very level of litigation does not have equivalent. Even the 1979 12 to 3rd of 19, which was it was a revolutionary case, the MPN and the UPN era, Obafemi Awolowo and Shehu Shagari's era, where the Supreme Court needed to interpret what is the 12 to 3rd of 19. Very controversial. In fact, the best mathematicians gave their own result, but the Supreme Court felt otherwise. So, coming to the issue of all eyes on judiciary, the Nigerians are going through what they never believed. In fact, even the leaders themselves, by now, they should have discovered that there is an intellectual vacuum. We had likely overhyped some persons. Nobody should campaign. Nobody should aspire to public office without a clear plan. So once you get elected, you are hitting the ground running, which has become a signature tune to everybody. Hit the ground running, and we are seeing people hitting the ground and the ground is running, and they are still stuck where they are. So Nigerians are looking at the judiciary. Not a matter that, oh, it's opposition people are looking at the judiciary. Even people that have voted for those that are in power. It's not just at the national level. Different states, though we have possibly less litigations, particularly having to do with National Assembly, because the technology that was adopted for the election was implemented for the National Assembly. But, and even maybe the governorship, but when it went to the presidential, the stories that touched the heart now setting. So instead of people saying, oh, because of the fuel subsidy which you just talked about, which has created, has opened up the reality that there was no clear plan for what government went into, citizens have refused to hit the streets. Why? Because they are looking at, is there alternative, or can we hear what the court will say? If we do this now, it may be misconstrued that, oh, it's the opposition that are doing it. Now they converted that energy to say, all eyes on judiciary. It's a consciousness. It's not a violent thing. And for the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria to sanction a body that is responsible to vet adverts like that, no pictures were shown, only the gavel. If it's not there on billboards, it will be there on social media, it's there on people's consciousness. So it's an indication that some persons are not comfortable about real conversations that may even help they themselves to set things and give people hope, have peace. Let's see what comes out of the judiciary. So it just raises a question mark on the professional body itself. I believe that sanction is too grievous, it's too heavy. It's like killing an ant with a sledgehammer. It could have been, okay, let's look into it and let's see what we can do. But to just come out outrightly, it also puts them also on the spotlight.
But the contention with regards to that particular issue is the fact that it is throwing up, a case that is still in the court of jurisdiction. The Election Petition Tribunal is still ongoing because a resolution hasn't been given by the court yet. So the offended parties are saying you cannot, have a debatable conversation, around a matter that is still in court. You cannot be advertising a case that is still in court. There is a picture story that we threw up this morning where the judges allegedly are saying having our pictures or our stories on billboards is a threat to our lives. So let's look at it from that angle. How does having this hashtag that has been trending for over a week, the reactions are just coming in now, having these reactions, all eyes on the judiciary, does it really affect the proceedings, of a court? Is this really, pressurizing the judiciary to even attempt to influence their, what would I call it, end statement at the end of the day?
Well, when there are cases in courts, people, particularly the parties, are not allowed to discuss, to bring out the details and give the possible outcome and all of that. But the reality is that you cannot stop conversation. You can't stop conversation of cases going on in court, particularly when virtually the entire population are interested in the outcome. Remember, it's just about a little over 30% was the difference that made the present administration at the national to be declared winner. When you put the entire votes together, the opposition had more votes, over 60%, which means we are looking at the country where almost 65 or call it almost 70% of people didn't vote for the winner, which makes the winner the winning very slim and in the minority. And because of their interest, remember, there was that appeal to the judiciary that the proceedings should be streamed live for people to watch. That shows the interest. We've never had it so raw that the court had to give a pronouncement that we are not going to stream live. But then we still have reports from court. Citizens must be informed. Analysts must analyze what is going on. You can't stop that. No matter who you think you are, it becomes very difficult. People only get on the wrong side of the law when they now want to put words into the mouth of the panel of judges. And before even the exit of the last administration, we heard what the then Minister for, Minister for Information went to say. Was it in London?
Mohammed.
Yes. That the election was free and fair, and the things he was saying, this matter is in court. And you are giving impression, telling the foreign media, people are not, you don't follow the story, you don't know the story, look at your reports, you are this. That in itself alone, the court should have complained.
Okay, but part of the questions that is being put on the table is the fact that this conversation, this propaganda that has been thrown up by some Nigerians, even going to the extent of putting on billboards, of which the advertising agency has been, wholesomely scrutinized for not vetting that kind of advertisement with the guidelines of the agency. The conversation and the problem is that this can instigate public unrest and, breach public peace.
No, I don't agree with that. The only thing is that they have their rules. If those entrusted to vet adverts did not find anything wanting, it's not they are live. Those billboards were not put up illegally, and I understand that those billboards, at least I've not seen one in our state here.
It was majorly in the FCT.
In the FCT, yes, and very massive billboard. There's a process to go about it. I don't sanction the issue of either putting their pictures or telling them what to do, or you're putting up a particular political party has a signature there. No, there's nothing like that. So they need to do more homework to fine-tune that. But the issue of all eyes on the judiciary has been on right from day one. For the mere fact that people said, we want this thing to be televised live. There are some other countries that they televise live proceedings of tribunals. In fact, Oputa panel was televised live. That was a very sensitive tribunal. Understand? So at the end of the day, you don't try to make too much fuss out of what could have been handled without making it sensational. After all, there are even more serious issues which citizens like. We talk about the issue of going to war in Niger. You've heard the position of citizens, clergies, and you've seen that the best job done to save us from embarrassment, to save us from the risk of going to a war that does not concern us the way they are doing it, is from the public. So you cannot say, because Mr. President has spoken, because he's the chairman of ECOWAS, whatever he says is law. No! Every leader is a servant. You're a servant leader, and you must come back to the people that gave you the mandate. What do you say about this?
But they also seeing this as some form of blackmail against the judiciary.
It is not blackmail at all. Judges, and when you look at where we have come from, particularly the last administration, what happened in the judiciary, where judges were raided at very odd hours in the midnight, arrested, given charges that were not real. Some of them were later exonerated. But by this time, a whole serving Chief Justice of the Federation had been ousted. And somebody was brought in. And even the issues raised around the person that was brought in was waved aside. What happened finally? The same judges at the Supreme Court petitioned the Chief Registrar, having to do over 100 and something billion. So the judiciary themselves have been on the spot. And some judgments which have become so controversial that even they themselves, they now start joining issues with public who are saying, how can you, somebody did not contest election, did not even buy form, there was not even a nomination, and you've given that person ticket or the go ahead to go back to where he was coming from, where he never even participated.
Two things.
And even,
sorry, okay.
And even the international community, we've seen or we've heard that some judges have been barred from entering a place like United States of America. Discussions, appraisal, including by even legal luminaries, are something that doesn't really go down well. Nobody is intimidating anybody. If anybody is going to intimidate anybody, it will be those that want to say that, oh, black is white and white is black. You have to accept it, otherwise, like they used to say, INEC chairman, he said, go to court. And by the time you now go to court, we are seeing
bring this, together. This particular action is, termed towards the APC government, and has the persona of the president being attached to this move to disband, the advertising agency of Nigeria. And one conversation that has been thrown up again as a result of this is the perceived authoritarian leadership style of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also seeing the fact that he seems to be very dictatorial in his throwing up dictatorial tendencies. Because throw your mind back, one of our sister stations, someone went there, had an interview, they were slammed. So it's just more like, once you have a conversation that does not sit in a way that augurs well to certain parties, you get a slam. Holistically, where do you think this is going to put Nigerians? Where do you think this is going to put the media and even the freedom of speech in the country with this particular administration?
Well, a new Nigeria was born on the 25th of February. I keep saying that till we come to full knowledge of that. That new Nigeria was because citizens became very conscious. They wanted to be free from a leadership that was like a deity, the deity that was not doing the people good. That was what some persons made out of President Muhammadu Buhari. Some of us have said, the man is failing. He's not doing things rightly. And they will say, no, he's bringing out 100 million people out of poverty. Within this period, we'll be getting 10 million out by this time. And before you know it, over 133 officially. You can consider it up to almost 170 million Nigerians have been thrown to multidimensional poverty. For Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the issue that, is autocratic, is authoritarian, is this and that, for me, and for anybody that knows what it means to come through elective office, a number of people that come through elections are at the mercy of what they call godfathers. They can hardly act because what would the godfather say? I'm going to offend somebody. But that's the difference with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He does not have a godfather. He is a godfather himself. And the advantage Nigeria is supposed to derive from that is because we've been saying we need a leader with the political will. We need a leader with the vision. We need a leader who can stamp his feet and take a decision. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has all of that going for him. But what has been my position? My position has been that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not a follower. He is a born leader. And a typical born leader naturally may have the tendencies to be feared by his subordinates, who will not be able to tell Your Excellency, please, can I say my thought on this? Most of them are sycophants, propagandists. All they want to do, sing his praise so that you can have something to take. That's why we need people that tell truth to power. What am I trying to say? Someone's antecedents is what he brings to the table. I grew up in Lagos, far back early 70s. I had my primary, secondary school in Lagos. So I know Lagos, I know the people. I speak the language. And we know how Lagos progressed. We saw when some parts of Lagos was very local. So when people overhype Mr. President as the maker of Lagos, we say it's strange, don't do this to him. Nigeria, one, is not even Lagos. And what were his antecedents? He is firm. He is able to, get people working for him. Even after leaving power, he still has a full grip of Lagos. Nobody can deny that fact. But what are the things we can say? If he did this in Lagos, if he does it here, let's just go to sleep. You can't really have that. So the challenge now becomes, we need to help Mr. President. One, age is no longer on his side. There's something somebody could have done when he was a bit younger, but he cannot do it now. So if we need somebody who has a political will to take decision, we have Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What decision is he taking? Like when you saw him at the swearing in, he just announced subsidy is gone, which was not in his inaugural speech. And he went to France almost 2 weeks after to say that he was possessed by courage. You don't get possessed by courage that
and an entire country is running defined on that possession.
Yes. And some persons who will have helped him, like the NNPC, who have been the problem of this country, immediately they now went and announced a new price. You are no longer a regulating body. NNPC is a company. To cut the whole matter short, for Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Mr. President, to be seen as somebody that has political will can take decision is to our advantage. The only disadvantage we have is like what I said earlier. There is a very serious knowledge gap. Which must be filled by citizens.
Right.
And for instance, the issue of the first one, we cannot talk about, shy away from it. We'll talk about it until it will sink. The problem in that sector was not subsidy. It has never been subsidy. The problem has been corruption, which Mr. President himself owned up in his speech that there is what is called elites of elites.
Elites of elites.
Which he himself, surprisingly, is afraid to touch. Until he touches those people, brings them to book. We don't have hashtags.
Yeah. Hashtags are, part of the things that have brought us to the place that we are. But like Citizen Matthew O'Connor, founder and president of Open Forum, has said, one of the biggest gaps that we have is that of, citizen knowledge and participation in what is going on in our country. And throwing up this citizen participation and knowledge is part of the things that deal on the judiciary. And let's see how this will go in the next couple of days, running into weeks. But this is the much we can bring to you on Rise and Shine this morning. A very big thank you to our guest, Citizen Matthew O'Connor, for coming on the show and sharing his wealth of knowledge. But until tomorrow, where we bring you more robust conversations on Nigeria. My name is Uyai Anyeka, and thanks for being a part of Rise and Shine. Let's do this again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of our program, and I'll let you go to Isaac on Sports Central.